Star Wars The Force Awakens has been released, so let's talk about it a little bit. This is the seventh film in the Star Wars series, Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Who would have thought we'd see this day? Especially since, with Return of the Jedi, all those years ago, in 1983, the sixth film in the Star Wars series, it ended things. It was the third concluding chapter in the Star Wars trilogy. Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, they resolved everything. They battled, and there was redemption, and evil was cast away, and everyone was happy and dancing with Ewoks, and that was pretty much that. So where are we going to get a new story, basically? And, I mean, obviously, knee-jerk reaction is, hey, do you want a new Star Wars movie? Fuck yeah. But one of my reservations going into this movie was, okay, so those three movies, I mean, they're, in my opinion, they're the three of the best movies ever made. They're great not just for their amazing special effects, they're great characters, the action, the adventure, everything like that. But it is great storytelling, and we hold those movies in a high standard, specifically in regards to the storytelling, where you kind of reach a point where it's like, do we want to close that book? Let our characters live happily ever after, not continue the story, not risk diluting it or stretching it out unnecessarily, kind of being counterproductive to what storytelling is supposed to be about. But movies kind of a different storytelling beast altogether. They're very franchise oriented. This is Star Wars. This is a franchise. So I mean, they gotta do what they gotta do, basically. So I mean, that was a concern for me, but I'll say for sure they find a lot of ways around it. And just in general, it's such a surreal experience sitting down and seeing a brand new Star Wars movie, not a prequel. A story continued from where it left off from Return of the Jedi. That's incredible to think that this has finally happened. And I'm sure, a lot of people will be getting on YouTube and talking about their experience and, the Star Wars title coming up and the whole crowd cheering and things like that. So, I mean, definitely had an experience like that. And seeing the text crawl, of course. I mean, a lot of people, there's like a niche crowd who really holds like the text crawl very dearly and like wants it to be perfect and things like that. I think it's a good text crawl. If you're a connoisseur of text crawls, very kind of bold opening to it. Luke Skywalker is missing, so that captures your attention. You're like, okay, Luke Skywalker, I know him. What's going on here? And it kind of, just like all the other movies, it gives you little tidbits. Luke Skywalker's missing. General Organa is sending her best fighter pilot to search him out, find him, find the map, whatever. A resurgence in the dark side. The Third Reich has set up. The First Order has set up, and Darkseid's kind of coming back. They want to kill Luke. Luke's the only last Jedi. Whatever, things like that. So, I mean, it gives you everything you need to know. But in true serial kind of fashion, and in the fashion that I love from all the movies, all the Star Wars movies, is that it particularly, I'd say, very in a similar way to the first movie. Like, how I felt seeing this movie was in a similar way I would think possibly audiences may have felt going into Star Wars 77 the first time, where you're thrust into the middle of a story, basically, just as you would be, in the whole serial fashion, where there is, like, you can be a Star Wars fanatic, but there's chunks missing. There's a good 30 plus years. Something's gone on. You're not sure what it is. So we're kind of catching up, and we're kind of getting pieces of this story and learning things as we go along, much like we were introduced to the universe in 77. So I thought that was a really good way to kind of make this movie its own, but still obviously throwing in the Star Wars stuff, because we know the characters, we know Han Solo, Leia, Luke, all that stuff. So I think they find a good way around that, and I think they are able to, in kind of the same kind of way that a lot of studios are doing with their franchises, sort of partially rebooting it, sort of. We get the new characters, as you would expect. The new characters are the focus for a great amount of the movie. Before we get kind of the whole fan service, like, hey, Han Solo's back kind of stuff. So that's the ultimate test. In that, do we like these new characters? And I absolutely love these new characters. Actually, John Boyega playing Finn, this stormtrooper who kind of decides, hey, I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid here. I'm gonna get the fuck out of Dodge, basically. I thought he was great. Very high energy performance, and just I love that he's a character that's really unsure of himself or what the hell he is doing, and it's very funny to see him in contrast to the Poe character, the great pilot that's has the map and everything like that, who's very cocky and very sure of himself. So they have a good scene together where they're kind of escaping from I guess it's a Death Star, or not Death Star, a Star Destroyer spaceship. They're escaping a fucking spaceship. That was a good scene, and there's like a really good scene where like they're on a TIE fighter, and it's like hooked up to like a cable, and they're like flying around and shooting, and all that's great. And we have Rey, who's a wonderful character, the scavenger character, who is very similar to, at least in terms of where they are in a certain type of mindset, certain type of location. Luke Skywalker from the first movie, so she's kind of like the new generation, I guess. Luke Skywalker, where she's kind of a loner. She's a scavenger. She's getting portions of food for her little scraps that she brings, and kind of a lonely life. But we sense a mystery about her, and as we kind of go through the movie, we learn a little bit more about her, and that maybe there's a little bit more to her, which of course there is, because it's fucking Star Wars. And obviously with Star Wars, I have criticisms of the movie. Star Wars, it's very easy to say, oh, everything's because of destiny. Well, here, there's so much shit that's like really convenient and really all just waiting to be found, basically. Like the Millennium Falcon is right there on that planet, Jakku. I'd be pressed to try to explain to you how Han Solo and Chewbacca get into the movie too. I don't know, maybe it was a little bit of a late showing. Maybe I nodded off a little bit, but it's just all of a sudden it's like, here we are, Chewie, we're home, whatever. But I don't know, and just a lot of convenient stuff like that, which is fine. But at a certain point, you're like, okay, well, how often can you use a destiny excuse? But small potatoes. I think we have a very compelling villain in Kylo Ren this time. Again, I have complaints about him. The voice is a little like what? But they even like acknowledge that with the Poe character. He's like, yeah, I can't really hear you, and we kind of get hints along the way that there's something more about him too. Like he's kind of the new sort of leader of this Reich, of this order, and he's a Darth Vader wannabe, basically. Which, I mean, if you're gonna have a villain in the Star Wars series, he's probably gonna have to be a Darth Vader wannabe. And one of the things that a lot of people really like about that first Star Wars movie, the '77, is how Darth Vader doesn't seem as in control as he does in the other movies, sort of, where like you see people questioning him and stuff like that. Here with Kylo Ren, absolutely, like you can just sense people like talking behind his back the whole time. So he's a very insecure kind of villain. He's not calculating. He's very sloppy, sort of. He gets very enraged, like one scene, one of the admirals or whatever comes in with bad news. He takes out the lightsaber. Anything else? And I thought that was a good scene, and all the force choking stuff and things like that. And there's some other kind of sort of emperor character, I guess, Spoke. So he's either a Sith Lord or part of a bike. He kind of looks like, I don't know, like that orc in The Hobbit. I didn't think that character design was that good, but he sort of reminds me, Braveheart, how like the guy with leprosy who's like the father, and he's always like, you're fucking things up, and that's kind of him. I think they took some inspiration from Braveheart a little bit in this movie, but we have the classic tropes and things like that, and of course we have all this kind of storytelling tropes and things like that. Fathers and sons, we have siblings and parents and their children, things like that. Things that kind of feels Star Warsy, and Destiny and things like that. And of course, great action and adventure. I mean, you go into this movie, and surely anybody who's in charge of this, I don't really know exactly who's in charge. Like, here's one thing about The Force Awakens. If you have any problems with it, guess what? You can't blame George Lucas this time, so fuck off. But it's like whoever's in charge of it. Okay, we gotta have all these Star Wars things. We gotta have lightsaber battles. We gotta have shooting. We gotta have daring escapes, things like that. I think it brings the daring escapes and great action scenes, things like that. And a lot of like ground skirmishes. I found, like, if you're a fan of like seeing stormtroopers get shot and like flying across the screen, this movie is a treat. It does that like 20 billion times. Like, so if you like to see stormtrooper abuse, then you're in for something here. So that's good. And I thought there was one really good scene again with Finn, where everyone kind of knows him. They're like, that's the fucking traitor. One of these stormtroopers has this thing. I don't know what. I'm sure there's like already like a Star Wars Wikipedia page on this weapon, but like it comes out sort of like a baton, sort of, and he's like fighting with him, and that was a really cool scene. And of course, there's a great lightsaber battle towards the end of the movie, which I thought was really nice. Again, you'll get people who will praise it for not being overly choreographed like the prequels are, and that's absolutely fair enough. With this movie, it has kind of the practical effects that everyone seemed to be clamoring for, and in watching it, I was like, I don't really care. I mean, there's some good CGI effects here and things like that. So, I mean, you see something that looks like it's like a puppet, and you're like, okay, this is real. This is not CGI. Meanwhile, it's just walking in the background. So what the fuck do I care? I really care about the story itself and the spectacle itself, and I think it delivers on those notes. I'll say this is probably the first Star Wars movie where I felt that it wasn't really innovating special effects in any way. Like, I'll say this, there's one scene early on in the movie where we meet Rey for the first time, and she's, collecting her portions, things like that, and she puts this, like, powdered portion in the pod, and it bubbles, and it turns into bread or something like that. And it was a seamless effect, and I was like, wow, that's really impressive. And I don't know what it says about this movie where the most impressive special effect was bread. So I don't know. Like, I have my reviews up. I like the prequels. I like the George Lucas prequel trilogy. I thought they kind of innovated special effects in certain ways. Here, I mean, the effects are good, but they're just not. There's nothing like that's like amazingly innovative or new. It feels like the effects that we'd seen, J.J. Abrams' Star Trek movies or what have you. But, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And there are some good effects here. And, like, Oscar winner Lupita Nyong'o playing this fucking alien, that looks good. And there's, a fun scene where Han Solo, he's kind of buddying up with Rey and Finn. And the little BB-8 robot, of course, who's, like, cutesy to the max, and I'm sure everyone will love them and have them on a t-shirt and have a little plush toy for their kids, where they go into this bar on this planet, and this music is playing. It's like supposed to echo the cantina scene, and it's like Han Solo's like, watch out, this is where all the weirdest action figures are made. So you see all these characters in the background, and it's like, again, you just know there's going to be like a whole Star Wars Wikipedia article on all these characters. So, and they're all practical effects, and it's like, wow, great. Okay, whatever. But we have this attitude of like crossing our arms and be like, what do you got for me, Star Wars? So, I mean, maybe it's a cynical kind of thing, but it's very familiar. It does echo in a lot of ways. It's like poetry. It rhymes. The first Star Wars film, because we have a very important piece of information in one of the droids, BB-8, and this story can get a little bit junky, sloppy. Like, you think it's about one thing, then it turns into another, because you really think, okay, so this movie's about the pursuit of Luke Skywalker, right? Well, not to get into spoilers, I'm rambling so much already about nothing, so I'm probably going to do a spoiler review where I talk for like 6 hours, just trying to comprehend this movie. But I'll watch it. I'll watch the movie obviously like 10,000 times, whether or not you get the impression if I like it or not. But anyway, you think it's about Luke Skywalker, or the pursuit of Luke Skywalker, finding this map. Who made this map? I don't know. Maybe he did because he wants a special chosen one to find him or whatever. But anyway, then all of a sudden the movie's like, oh, by the way, it's not about this. It's actually about. Hey, okay, you remember the Death Star? Well, guess what, guys? They have a fucking super duper Death Star now, and it's like 10 times worse than the Death Star, and we got to stop it or else everything's gonna blow up. And it's like, okay, that's what the movie's about. So let's save the day and fight and blow things up because there's a weak spot. All right, convenient. So let's do that and stuff like that. And I don't know. It's just kind of, I don't know. It has all the action adventure stuff that you hope for in a Star Wars movie. Though I would say its focus is a little off. It's hard to say. I mean, this is a tall order. This is a brand new Star Wars movie. This is the first movie to continue the story, and I mean, J.J. Abrams. You can just tell he's a director who really cares about the material. He's a director who I'm positive grew up watching Star Wars, wanted to do the best job possible, wanted to make the best Star Wars movie possible. And that's exactly what we got, which isn't bad. I mean, it is what it is. I'd say the movie was done with love and care, with a lot of competence, but at the same time, you kind of, I don't know, you just think, well, George Lucas at least had a vision, whether you agree with it or not. Here it's just, let's make another Star Wars movie. Let's try to please the fans on all the way we can. There's a lot of fan service, a lot of Harrison Ford mugging at the camera, like holding Chewbacca's weapons, like, I like this. And it's like, he can do any type of performance that he wants, and JJ's pretty much at his mercy. He's like, I'm Han fucking Solo, you know that, right? And whatever, but he's good in the movie, though. He has a lot of fun. He almost serves as like a reminder, as this crotchety old man, that, yeah, this is a silly movie, so he's here's a guy talking to a fucking dog, so, I mean, whatever, but anyway, the movie just, I don't know, here's the biggest problem. It just kind of feels like this is the first part in the revival of the franchise, basically. And that's exactly what it is. So obviously it feels that way because that's what it is. So I unfortunately didn't feel too satisfied by the story as a whole. Like, I'll say for sure, the ending is a fucking cop-out. I don't care what you say, honestly. And there was a part of me, after, we had a really good kind of climactic moment. There's a shocking moment that hopefully wasn't spoiled for you, that really brought the tension up, that really rose the stakes, that really resulted in a good showdown between the heroes and the villain of the movie. Then we kind of resolve it, but then there was another scene that was possibly going to be taking place where I think I wanted it too much. I think I wanted that scene to take place too much, where you think, this is a Star Wars movie, we've had the big action, we're going to have a quiet scene now. Maybe a dialogue scene where maybe there's a few revelations. This movie could have been called Rey's Quest or Rey's Odyssey. It feels like an Odyssey. And so we lead up to that scene. Directed by J.J. Abrams. Fuck off. Honestly. You can say anything you want. You can say, oh, well, it's a series. It's going to be the next one, obviously. Yeah, I get it, but the movie has no ending. That's a problem, and I don't care what you say. Maybe you're brainwashed to consume more Star Wars. There, you've had 2.5 hours watching this movie. Now wait a couple years for the next one. Bring your money. I feel so cynical, but okay, those are my main complaints, and I probably have a few other complaints. I mean, maybe the fan service is a little too much. Maybe, they shouldn't raise the music too much at showing R2-D2. Best line in the movie. It's not a spoiler. For all I've said, if I have previous reviews, you can watch them. For all I've said about how annoying C-3PO is, my favorite line in the movie is, "Oh, you probably don't recognize me because of my red arm." Oh, sorry. You probably don't recognize me because of my red arm. Anyway, that's my new favorite line. That's like I want that on a T-shirt. But yeah, so I have some problems with it. But I mean, this movie. Again, I feel like I'm rambling, so let's try and wrap this up. I'll do a more spoiler-heavy review. Basically, you can't please everyone with the Star Wars movie. I think it delivers what it sets out to give us, and it's a great spectacle. I mean, it's better than your average, Hollywood schlock. So I'll give it that. Star Wars, we hold in kind of a higher standard. I don't think it quite met that. I don't think it quite met greatness or any kind of mastery to its craft, but it's good. It's a really good Star Wars movie, and that's what I'll say. So I rate Star Wars The Force Awakens 3.5 stars out of 4. It's a fun Star Wars movie. It's entertaining. It's not great, but it's fucking Star Wars. So that's my review. Thank you very much for watching. Obviously, I'm going to watch this movie like 10,000 more times like anyone else. I enjoyed it. I have problems with it, as I'm sure I explained here. But I think maybe I'll go into further detail with a spoiler review, maybe a little bit later in the next couple of days. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, I have other reviews up of Star Wars movies, so check out that playlist, Star Wars series review. And be sure to comment, rate, subscribe, and let me know what you thought about The Force Awakens. I've been holding off everything to just get in front of the camera right now and talk about it because I don't want to hear anyone else's opinion. Like, I'm very thankful that literally nothing was spoiled for me for this movie, so I did a good job avoiding spoilers. So now I'm gonna binge on reviews pretty much all day and hopefully get into the conversation a little bit more, do a spoiler video, talk about it a little bit more in depth. But let me know what you think below. Comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. Visit Derek237.com. And until next time, may the Force be with you, always.